Good morning to you all. Good to see everyone. And those of you worshiping with us via Facebook Live, good to have everybody. Good to be together in the building, worshiping physically together, getting a little of that social distancing and fellowship. That's always good. Any way I can get fellowship, I'll take it. Amen. So very happy for the Farishes, and they have a new granddaughter. Ellen and Trey, I know, are just elated with excitement, as you are. So very thankful to have another child born into the congregation here. That's always a blessing, and I know others are yet to come. Yeah, not too far away maybe. Just so exciting with that. How many of you have realized while talking with a mask on or singing with it on that it wasn't all the people beside you or around you that had the bad breath? Anybody else discovered it? It was me. You may have bought some Tic Tacs since a few weeks ago. But anyway, we learn an awful lot about ourselves under different circumstances, don't we? That may well be one of them. As we're going through the narrative about the kings of Israel, that's kind of what I decided that I would preach through. Of course, you have to start with the first king if you're going to do that, of Israel, and that would be King Saul. I say first king. You know, God was their king. He told Samuel, they've rejected me from being their king. They want an earthly king. And so that's kind of where we are in that. And Saul has sinned. He's lifted up his heart in pride and rebellion against God's word and his will for Saul's kingship and for Israel. And what comes as a result of that is God says, you're not going to be king anymore. And a matter of fact, I'm taking the kingdom from you. Now, from our vantage point reading that, we may say, well, he's just going to take Saul out of the way and give it to the next in his lineage. Not so. When God says, I'm taking the kingdom from you, that means I'm taking it from your household. True or false, David, the next appointed king, was from Saul's household. That's false, isn't it? This is David, son of Jesse. This is an entirely different ball game altogether. And so the kingdom will be taken from Saul and his lineage. I've chosen at this point, so that we can move at a little quicker pace, I guess, to do maybe about 3 chapters a week. That'll help us, I think, cover a little bit more ground, but get more of the picture as we move along. And to do it that way, I'm going to have to preach these lessons just a little differently than I'm used to doing. One of the positives is we're mailing the bulletin out on Tuesday evening, usually, Tuesday afternoon each week. I have been impressed at the number of you who text or call or email or say something in passing that you have already read the text that we're going to be preaching on Sunday morning. If you're not doing that, that would be a very helpful thing from this point forward in particular, because we'll be covering 2 to 3 chapters at once. And having read the text, then when we get ready to present a few lessons from it, what happens? You remember things and can kind of put them in their proper order. So I encourage you to be reading the lesson text each week as you receive it by mail. And we'll say once again, if you're not receiving a bulletin, please let the office know. Miss Tracy would be happy to put you on that mailing list. We want everybody to get one who wants one, and so be sure to do that. Well, you can kind of think about a chess match, I guess. There's a lot of moves being anticipated by David and by Saul. Saul's out to get David. David's on the run at this point in our narrative in 1 Samuel 22 through 24. Well, Saul learns that he's over here, and he goes over there, but by that time somebody's tipped David off, and now he's over here again. And there's all sorts of strategy that they're using. David to try to stay away from his demise, and Saul to try to remove David. And in his mind, what is he thinking? Well, I'll get to keep the kingdom then. Maybe it'll stay in my family. maybe my sons will get to be king. All I got to do is get rid of David, right? Well, God's purpose was a little bit higher than that. And I think we'll see throughout all of this, God is intent on David being king. He's going to preserve his life, no matter what all Saul may try to do. Let me ask you a question today. All eyes right here for just a moment. What are your intentions? Do you think intentions count for anything? For instance, sometimes you may say or do something to someone. Later, you find out that it offended them or it hurt their feelings. And your immediate thought was, well, that was not my what? Intention. I wouldn't want to hurt you for anything in this world, and I am so sorry that I was so unthoughtful that that's what I did. Intentions also can work like this. I intend on visiting the sick. I intend on helping orphans. I intend on serving the Lord in my life. I intend on one day obeying the gospel and being saved and becoming a Christian. But if I never get around to doing the good intentions, what good are intentions? Okay? There is a lot of truth in the old sentence, the old sentiment that what? The road to a certain final destination is paved with what? Good intentions that never got fulfilled, that were never done. And so the way I want to kind of look at our narrative at this point today, as I want to look at it from the standpoint of the intentions of the characters. Now, if you've got your bulletin out in front of you, I only put 6 in there. Okay? Here's some you can add maybe at the top as you read back through this again. What was the intention of the Lord through all of this? What were His intentions? His will, that's what's going to be done, right? What were the intentions of Jonathan? He comes up in this particular narrative too, to come out to the wilderness where David's hiding, to assure him and renew their covenant with each other. Look, I'm on your side. My father is not going to lay a hand on you. God's going to see to it, okay? You're going to be okay. What were the intentions of the Philistines? What were the intentions of the people of Keilah? Okay, so you have a number of other people than the ones I've listed in your bulletin, but of course, to preach a sermon on that, we'd be here till Tuesday. So nonetheless, I've chosen a few, and we'll not dwell with any of these very long. But I want you to think about, what do you intend to do in your life? And hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's to please and serve the Lord. Now the question, is it just an intention that I'm going to do one day? Or is it what I'm intending to do each day and I'm starting right now, or I've already started, okay? Because we want to serve and please God. Intentions. Well, first we look at Saul's intentions. His haven't been good for a long time, have they? Already twice, as we've studied King Saul, we learned that because of his behavior and hardness and stubbornness of heart, that an evil spirit from the Lord has already come upon him twice. And so his intentions are not good. His intentions toward David are less than desirable. Here is a man, now you just think about the difference in a minute between Saul's intentions and David's intentions. Here is a man who, because of his own pride, his own unwillingness to give up the power that he has on the throne, the very resentment that he has with the thought that his sons will never be king like him, it's going to be taken from his family. You think about the intentions of this person now to destroy. God has chosen to be the next king. He's so jealous of him he can't see straight. The old green monster of envy has entered in. He's already thrown a javelin at David twice. David's only there to soothe him with music, to try to help that evil spirit that he has. And yet, on 2 occasions, he's hurled a spear at David to try to pin him to the wall because he understands David's role upcoming. And so Saul's intentions are not good in the least toward David. As you read this narrative, for some of you who like geography, Get you a good Bible map and you trace where all David has fled to, trying to trick and move away from where Saul and his company might find him. And also in that are the Ziphites, who would later come to Saul and say, hey, David's hiding over here with us. If you want to come get him, we'll give him to you. So look at their intentions as you read through this narrative. And so just notice how far David goes and the different directions. Sometimes the Lord tells him, you're not safe here, get up and go. These people are going to give you away to him. And so David's constantly on the move, but Saul is so intent, it doesn't matter where he goes, he keeps pursuing him. And on one occasion, the only thing that might have kept him from going to the other side of the mountain where David and his men were fleeing was, he had heard words, the Philistines are over here and they've caused war with some of your people, so he has to go. Don't tell me that wasn't orchestrated by God himself. Okay? And so his intention toward David was horrible. It was bad. It was all out of jealousy, out of his own pursuit to hold on to his power. You ever had intentions like that? Sometimes we read these Bible characters and we read the bad ones and we say, I don't have any of that in me. Are you sure? Are you sure that you don't have evil intent towards somebody who might even be a family member, or more so than that, a brother, a sister in Christ, and your intentions toward them are not good? You speak evil against them, which the Bible forbids. You say things that demean them and put them down, or you're so jealous of whatever talents or whatever you think that they are that you cannot focus on anything else except watching them fail. You see, that's an evil spirit. That's one that God does not delight in. What about Saul's intention toward the priest? That's in chapter 22, isn't it? First chapter in our text. When Saul is pursuing David, Saul has already, by the way, number 3 up there, kind of chastised his own men. He's using a lot of sarcasm. Not necessarily sarcasm, more so woe. Not telling him about where David goes. And more importantly, you haven't told me the covenant he's made with my son Jonathan. None of you have been so forthright as to be honest with me. You're all against me, the madman concept. You're all against me. You've not told me what Jonathan's doing for David to help him escape. None of you are really that intent on helping me. You have had no compassion on me. You see anything with Saul in his mentality? Does he really care about anybody else? Where is the focus always? It's about me. You don't care that I lose the kingdom. You don't care that it'll be taken from my heritage, my sons, rather, moving forward. You don't care about any of that. So his attitude toward his own men is that of scolding them into not helping, but his attitude toward the priest, Ahimelech. Of course, he comes down to Nob when he finds that David had been there. And he calls Ahimelech to him. Now, this is the priest of God, anointed to that position. Okay? Just as Saul was anointed to his. There were 3 who were anointed in the Old Testament. Prophets, priests, and who? Kings. Okay? Jesus fulfills all 3 of those, by the way. And so he begins to inquire of Ahimelech, about when David was here. There's no question that he was. And by the way, did David really do Ahimelech a favor? A little later on in this chapter, when he learns what happens to Ahimelech and the rest of the priests, you can tell David is just smitten with grief, and he blames himself. I never should have brought him into this. David lied to the priest, Ahimelech, when he came to him, made out like he was on Saul's business, but he wasn't. He was running from him. But there was a certain person standing by who took observation of the fact that the priest Ahimelech gave David and his men some showbread to eat, that he gave him Goliath's sword when he left. Anybody remember that man's name? It's kind of funny sounding to us. Anybody remember? Doeg? You remember that guy? I don't even know if I'm saying it right. I'm sure if we were to go back and hear these Hebrews talk, it's something totally different than what I'm saying, but it's spelled D-O-E-G, okay? But Saul begins to question the priest. How is it, he's putting this guilt on him now, how is it that my enemy comes to you and you inquire of the Lord for him as to what he ought to do? How is it that you feed him, you give him provisions for he and his men? How is it that you give him a sword? Now he has a weapon to use against me. You have helped my enemy. Now we pointed this out a few weeks ago. You ever get confused as to who your enemy is? Was David Saul's enemy? Only in Saul's mind. That's the only place where that was true. David was not his enemy. Saul, you could say, was really his own worst enemy. But you have helped my enemy. And then Saul turns to his own men and commands them to do what? Go upon the priest of God who makes sacrifices for the people to God on behalf of the sins of the people. I want you to kill him. Right here on the spot. He tells this priest, you will surely die, you and your household, your sons after you. You know something that was, let me skip to another slide here real quick. You know something quite noble about Saul's men? They're not like Saul, are they? How many of them jumped up and said, I'll do it? Somebody ready to move up the ladder in the king's court. That would do it, right? Whatever the king says to do, no matter how vile, no matter how unholy, how unfit, anybody looking to move up the ladder a little bit should have jumped up and said, what? Hey, I'll take care of that. What does the Bible say about his own men, his own fighting men, the closest to Saul? They what? They refused. They would not. Understanding how holy the priest was among the people, designated so to that position of honor by God himself, they would not raise a hand against the Lord's anointed priest. A little later, we're going to learn that David would not raise his sword or his hand against God's anointed what? King, when he had the chance. So these men, at least on this occasion, true or false, church, they show some amount of honor in the matter. Let me tell you something. You believe there's not a life lesson here? Every one of us either have had or will have an opportunity to do something despicable in order to move up, in order to gain favor, recognition, popularity, a career move, whatever, just as long as someone in a higher position of power wants us to do something that's not altogether right. Now nod your head if you know what I'm talking about, okay? It's not altogether what ought to be done. Where will our moral fiber be when that situation presents itself to us? Will we be this noble to recognize that there are some things that God's not going to be okay with? We know he's not going to be okay with it because he's told us he's not okay with it. And so they are unwilling to do the king's bidding. And so in all of this, what really was Saul's attitude toward God? Well, that's the very reason God's rejected him from being king, right? Not only is he trying to do away with God's next appointment for king, and so working against the will of God, here he's willing to kill the priest of God. Not a very wise or spiritual decision on Saul's part. Now let's move on to number 3 in your bulletin. We've touched on that. Ahimelech's intentions. I believe it's in chapter 22, the first chapter there of our narrative over chapter 22, 23, and 24. When Ahimelech does appear before Saul, Ahimelech pretty well defends himself and I believe tells the truth. At the end of the day, he finally says, Saul, look, I don't have anything to do with what's going on between you and David. How could I have known what's going on? You know, he comes down here and he tells me he's on business that you sent him to do. Who am I to doubt your son-in-law? In essence, is what he tells him. Who am I to sit here and say the man whom you've put over all your fighting men, okay, who am I to tell him, oh no, I don't believe